Animal liberationists have long campaigned for and won better regulation of the slaughter of Australian livestock sold overseas. Now they're voicing concerns about animals shipped overseas to breed. Currently, there are no safeguards for such animals, and 7:30 can reveal cases of Australian sheep and cattle dying from neglect in the Middle East. Guy Stainer reports, and a warning some people may find images in this story distressing.
The rolling hills of South Gippsland. With good rainfall, fertile soil and lush pastures, this region has been one of Australia's prime dairy districts for over 100 years. It's a long way from the deserts of Arabia.
An agent came here from Qatar and he brought his PA with him. They came and they had a look around and looked at my stud herd, and they were very interested in purchasing stud cattle for breeding in Qatar.
The cattle would go to a farm north of Doha called Al Wab, owned by Qatari Prince Sheikh Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani.
One comment from the PA was, yes, these cattle are going to better conditions than what I have in my apartment in Paris.
Vet technician Deb Clark was invited to inspect the farm, but rather than Parisian luxury, she found a lack of infrastructure to support the thousands of sheep, goats and cattle coming from Australia.
There's no facilities here, there's no yards, there's no races, there's no crush. There's no water freely available.
She agreed to become a consultant to the farm to better manage the animals. After training staff and organising infrastructure, Deb Clark thought she was getting on top of desert farming. That perception was shattered last month.
The basic structures were in place, and I came home for 10 days and returned to Qatar, and the animals hadn't been fed. No one had checked the air conditioning in the calf unit, and it was over 50 degrees heat, and there were just dead, dying animals everywhere. And I was just absolutely heartbroken. I was in tears. Animals were too weak to even stand. They were lying in hot sand. They were frying, literally cooking in those kind of temperatures of 50 plus degrees. They were frying from the inside out. It was absolutely shocking.
Deb Clark took dozens of photos documenting what she saw.
Well, this cow's heat exhausted. She's had, malnutrition, and she's very, very dehydrated.
She recommended putting the cow down.
The worker sawed that cow's throat open with a pocket knife, and that's.
She saw 64 cows die in 1 week.
Tissue.
Many of the cattle sent to Qatar were once owned by Melinda Neist.
It's just unbearable grief, devastation. It's just awful. I can't bear to think of it, and I've heard about the conditions.
These are her cows being shipped at the start of the year. A few months later, they were little more than skin and bone and dying in the heat. She still hasn't been able to look at the photos.
I wouldn't be able to cope with it. That would stick with me. I can't. It's bad enough knowing the conditions. I just don't want to. I can't look at the photos.
10,000 sheep were exported to Al Wab Farm in February. Deb Clark says there's only 3,000 left.
I now believe that the agent has deceived all of us.
The buying agent is this man, Rida Hafian. He told 7:30 he was in Paris and unavailable for interview. He later said he was in Perth. He says only 20 sheep died and about 50 dairy cows, and says Deb Clark is to blame for changing the cow's feed.
We were all deceived, I believe, into thinking that our cattle would be going into conditions that we would be comfortable with, that they'd be going into conditions that they wouldn't be put at risk, that they wouldn't be neglected. That didn't happen.
Melinda Neist and Deb Clark are speaking out, fearing history is about to repeat. They say at the end of October another 10,000 sheep, 3,000 goats and 200 dairy cattle are planned to be shipped to the Al Wab farm.
There is absolutely nowhere for these animals to fit. There is no room for them, and there's no facilities for them.
While Australia has significant regulation of cattle shipped in the export for slaughter market, there's virtually nothing safeguarding livestock being shipped to another country to live.
This is the first time we've had any evidence of mistreatment of animals that have been exported for breeding purposes.
We need a system that's going to protect all dairy cows and breeding animals leaving our shores so that we do know where they're going, we do know how they're going to be treated, and at the end of their productive life we know that they're going to be slaughtered well too. We
are examining that. That's part of the overall review that we're doing in livestock animals.
In the last 2 years, 180,000 dairy cattle have been exported from Australia to 18 countries. Deb Clark is joining forces with the RSPCA this week, lobbying the federal government for change and to halt export to Al Wab farm. For some farmers, it's already too late.
I will never export cattle ever again. Ever.
Guy Stainer reporting.